Michael Thompson navigated the familiar sidewalk with his white cane, counting steps the way he'd done for the past 12 years since losing his sight in a construction accident. 43 steps from his apartment door to the corner store. Turn right. 62 steps to the crosswalk. Wait for the audio signal. Cross. Simple routines that kept his world manageable in a city that wasn't designed for blind people. What Michael didn't know was that Officer Derek Williams had been watching him for the past 3 blocks, following slowly in his patrol car, radio silent, already constructing a narrative in his mind. Suspicious male, acting erratically, possible drug activity. None of it was true. But Officer Williams had learned over his 15 years on the force that truth was negotiable, especially when it came to black men in his precinct, especially when he needed to meet his monthly arrest quota. Michael reached the corner store, felt for the door handle with his cane. Behind him, he heard a car door slam. "Hey! Stop right there!" Michael froze, confused. Was someone talking to him? "I said stop! Turn around slowly and put your hands where I can see them." Michael's heart rate spiked. He was being stopped by police. Every blind person's nightmare, unable to see what was happening, unable to read body language, unable to protect yourself when you couldn't see what was coming. "Officer, I'm blind. I have a white cane. I'm just trying to go into the store." "I don't care what you have. Turn around and put your hands up. Now." Michael carefully turned, raising his hand, still holding his cane. "My name is Michael Thompson. I live 3 blocks from here. I'm just getting groceries." Officer Williams approached, his hand on his weapon. "What's that in your hand?" "Drop it. It's my white cane. I'm blind. I need it to walk." "I said drop it. It could be a weapon." Michael's mind raced. If he dropped his cane, he'd be completely disoriented. But if he didn't comply, this officer sounded aggressive enough to escalate. He slowly lowered the cane to the ground. "Now put your hands behind your back." "Officer, please. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just a blind man trying to buy groceries." But Williams was already moving in, roughly grabbing Michael's arm and twisting it behind his back. Michael instinctively pulled away, not in resistance, but in pain and confusion, trying to maintain balance without his cane or sight. "He's resisting. Stop resisting. I'm blind. I'm just trying to stay upright." Williams forced Michael to the ground, his knee in Michael's back. Michael's face hit the concrete, his glasses, the dark ones he wore to protect his damaged eyes, skidding across the sidewalk. "You're under arrest for assaulting an officer." "I didn't assault anyone. I can't even see you." But Williams was already calling for backup, already crafting his story. Suspect became violent when approached, attempted to strike officer with weapon, resisted arrest, required force to subdue. What Officer Derek Williams didn't know, what he couldn't have known because he was too busy performing for the crowd gathering with their phones out, was that Michael Thompson wasn't just any blind man. He was Michael Thompson, former civil rights attorney. Michael Thompson, who'd won 3 major police brutality cases before losing his sight. Michael Thompson, who'd spent the last 12 years advocating for disability rights and police reform. And Michael Thompson never left home without his own body camera. The small device, clipped to his shirt collar and designed for blind users, had recorded everything. Every word, every action, every lie Officer Williams was about to tell. At the precinct, Michael sat in a holding cell, his body aching from being slammed to the ground. His phone had been confiscated, his cane taken as evidence, his request to call his lawyer denied until processing was complete. Processing for a blind man meant being shoved through a system designed for sighted people, unable to read forms, unable to see where he was being led, completely at the mercy of people who clearly didn't care. Thompson Michael, age 47, charged with assaulting a police officer and resisting arrest. The desk sergeant read off the charges with bored efficiency. "Those charges are false. I'm blind. I couldn't assault anyone." "That's for the judge to decide. You'll be arraigned tomorrow morning. I need to make a phone call. That's my right." The sergeant finally looked up, noticed Michael's unseeing eyes, the bruises forming on his face. For a moment, something like discomfort crossed his features. Then he pushed a phone across the desk. "You get 1 call." Michael felt for the phone, his fingers finding the numbers through muscle memory. He dialed the one person who'd know exactly what to do. "Keisha? It's Michael. I need you to come get me and bring the camera. Keisha Thompson, no relation, though they'd joked for years about getting married just to keep the last name, arrived at the precinct 40 minutes later. She was a documentary filmmaker who'd been working with Michael on a project about police interactions with disabled people. When Michael told her he wore a body camera now, she'd laughed and called him paranoid. She wasn't laughing anymore. "I want to see my client," Keisha announced to the desk sergeant, "Michael Thompson, and I want the body camera footage from the arresting officer." "You his lawyer?" "I'm his advocate. And yes, I'm filing a formal complaint about this arrest. A blind man with a white cane was violently arrested for assaulting an officer. I'm sure the media will be very interested." The sergeant's expression soured. "Wait here." 20 minutes later, Keisha was allowed into the holding area. She found Michael sitting on a bench, his hands folded in his lap, his face swollen and bruised. "Michael, oh my God, did they do this to you?" "Officer Williams did. Slammed me face first into the concrete." Michael's voice was steady, but Keisha could hear the tremor underneath. "The camera got everything, Keisha." "Everything? Where is it?" "Still clipped to my shirt." They didn't notice it. Thought it was just a medical device. Keisha felt a surge of something fierce and protective. She'd known Michael for 8 years, had watched him navigate a world that wasn't designed for blind people with grace and determination. And now some cop had brutalized him for the crime of existing while black and disabled. "We're going to destroy him," Keisha said quietly. "We're going to take that footage and we're going to make sure Officer Williams never wears a badge again. Not just him. The whole system that let this happen." Michael reached out, found Keisha's hand. "This is what we've been documenting. This is the story. I just never thought I'd be the subject of it." The arraignment the next morning was a circus. Word had gotten out that a blind civil rights advocate had been arrested for assaulting a cop. The local disability rights community showed up in force. News cameras lined the courthouse steps, and Officer Derek Williams stood in the back of the courtroom, confident that his version of events would prevail the way it always did. The prosecutor, a young woman named Sarah Chen, presented Williams's report. Defendant, acting suspiciously, refused to comply with orders, struck officer with weapon, white cane, resisted arrest requiring force to subdue. The public defender, an overworked attorney named James Rodriguez, looked at Michael's bruised face and sighed. He'd seen this script before. Cop's word against a defendant's. The cop always won. "Your Honor, my client is a 47-year-old blind man with no criminal record. He was attempting to enter a store when Officer Williams accosted him without cause. This is clearly a case of—" "Your Honor," Sarah Chen interrupted, "the defendant has a history of filing complaints against law enforcement. He's known to be antagonistic toward police officers. This appears to be a pattern of behavior." Michael felt his stomach drop. They were using his advocacy work against him. Every complaint he'd filed on behalf of clients, every police brutality case he'd won, was now being twisted into evidence that he was the aggressor. The judge, an older white man named Harold Morrison, studied the file. "Mr. Thompson, you've filed 17 complaints against police officers in the past decade." "Yes, Your Honor." "In my capacity as a civil rights attorney representing clients who were victims of police misconduct, or in your capacity as someone with a vendetta against law enforcement." "Your Honor, I'm blind. I couldn't assault a police officer if I wanted to. I can't even see where they are." Judge Morrison wasn't listening. He was already setting bail at $50,000, impossibly high for a man who lived on disability payments and whatever freelance advocacy work he could find. Michael was led back to holding, his body camera still recording everything, still capturing the injustice of a system that believed cops over citizens, able-bodied narratives over disabled reality. But Keisha Thompson, sitting in the gallery with Michael's camera footage already uploaded to her secure cloud storage, had other plans. By the time the judge finished his lunch break, the video would be everywhere, and Officer Derek Williams's career, along with his carefully constructed lies, would be over. The footage went viral in 4 hours. Blind man brutalized by cop, body cam reveals truth. Keisha had released it to every news outlet, every social media platform, every disability rights organization she could find. And the response was immediate and explosive. The video showed everything: Michael navigating with his cane, Officer Williams following him for no reason, the aggressive approach, Michael explaining he was blind, Williams ordering him to drop his weapon, clearly visible as a white cane. The violent takedown of a blind man who was doing nothing but trying to stay upright. And through it all, the audio of Williams shouting, "Stop resisting," while Michael repeatedly said, "I'm blind, I'm not resisting, I just can't see." By evening, protests were forming outside the police precinct. Disability rights groups, Black Lives Matter, civil liberties organizations, all demanding Officer Williams' immediate termination and charges filed. The police department, caught completely off guard, issued a statement. The matter is under investigation. But the matter wasn't under investigation. It was captured on video. There was nothing to investigate. There was only the question of whether the system would finally hold one of its own accountable. Michael Thompson sat in his cell, listening to reports on the radio that other inmates shared with him. He heard his own voice played back, calm, explaining, pleading. He heard the impact of his body hitting concrete. He heard the lies Officer Williams told, and he thought about the thousands of times this had happened to other people who didn't have cameras, who didn't have advocates, who didn't have the privilege of his education and his connections. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about every disabled person who'd been brutalized by police, who saw disability as threat. Every black person who'd been assumed criminal for existing. Every person whose word meant nothing against a badge and a gun. The revolution that Michael Thompson had been documenting for 8 years was about to explode. And he was standing at the center of it, blind but finally being seen. The video had 10 million views by midnight. By morning, it was 30 million. News networks played it on loop. Activists made it a rallying cry. And Officer Derek Williams woke up to find his name trending worldwide, for all the wrong reasons. The police department called an emergency press conference. Police Chief Robert Martinez stood at the podium, his face carefully composed. After reviewing the available evidence, including body camera footage from multiple sources, we have placed Officer Derek Williams on administrative leave pending a full investigation. "Administrative leave?" a reporter shouted. "He assaulted a blind man. Why isn't he arrested? We must follow proper procedures. Internal Affairs will conduct a thorough review. The review is on video. We all saw it." Chief Martinez's jaw tightened. No further questions. But the questions didn't stop. They multiplied. Why was Williams still getting paid? Why wasn't he in handcuffs like Michael Thompson? Why did disabled victims have to provide video evidence to be believed while officers' lies were taken as truth? Michael was released on bail that afternoon, the charges quietly reduced to disturbing the peace, the prosecutor's desperate attempt to save face. Keisha picked him up, along with a crowd of supporters who'd gathered outside the jail. "Michael, how do you feel? Did Officer Williams apologize? What's your message to other disabled people?" Michael stood on the courthouse steps, his white cane in hand, his face still bruised. Keisha described the scene to him: cameras everywhere, people holding signs that said "Justice for Michael" and "Blind Lives Matter." "I want to say something," Michael said quietly. Keisha handed him a microphone. The crowd went silent. "My name is Michael Thompson. I'm 47 years old. I've been blind for 12 years. And 3 days ago, I was violently arrested for the crime of being black and disabled in public." His voice was steady, clear. 12 years of navigating the world without sight had taught him to project confidence, even when he felt vulnerable. "Officer Williams saw me walking with my white cane and decided I was suspicious. When I explained I was blind, he ordered me to drop my cane, the only tool I have to navigate the world. When I tried to stay upright after losing my cane, he claimed I was resisting arrest. And when I hit the ground, unable to see or defend myself, he charged me with assault." The crowd erupted in anger, but Michael held up his hand. This isn't just about one bad cop. This is about a system that sees disability as threat, that sees blackness as criminal, that believes badges over bodies, weapons over white canes. Michael paused. "I had a camera. I had resources. I had people who believed me. Most people don't, and that's what needs to change." Officer Derek Williams watched the press conference from his living room. his career crumbling in real time. His union rep had told him to stay quiet, that they'd fight this, that his record would protect him. But Williams knew the truth. The video was damning. There was no spin, no alternative narrative that could explain away what everyone could see. His phone rang. His captain. "Williams, you need to come in. Internal Affairs wants to talk. I was following protocol. There is no protocol for slamming a blind man into concrete. Get in here, now." The Internal Affairs interview lasted 4 hours. 2 investigators, a union rep, and a lawyer walked Williams through the video frame by frame. "Why did you approach Mr. Thompson?" "He was acting suspiciously. Defined suspiciously. Erratic movements, appeared disoriented." "He's blind, Officer Williams. He uses a cane to navigate. That's not suspicious. That's disability." "I didn't know he was blind at first." "He told you immediately. You ordered him to drop his cane anyway." Williams shifted uncomfortably. "I thought it could be a weapon." "A white cane? The universal symbol of blindness?" "In the moment, I assessed it as potential threat." The lead investigator leaned forward. "Officer Williams, do you understand that a white cane is protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act? That ordering a blind person to drop their mobility device is considered disability discrimination?" "I was following my training. Your training doesn't include brutalizing disabled citizens." The investigator slid a paper across the table. "This is a notice of termination. You're fired, effective immediately." Williams felt the room spin. 15 years. 15 years on the force. Gone. "You can't do this. I have union protection. Your union has declined to defend you. The video is too clear. The public outrage too strong. You're done." But termination wasn't enough. Not for the activists who'd made Michael's case their rallying cry, not for the disability rights lawyers who saw an opportunity to change policy, and not for Michael himself, who'd spent 12 years documenting exactly this kind of abuse. The lawsuit was filed 1 week later. Not just against Officer Williams, but against the entire police department for systematic discrimination against disabled people. Michael's legal team had found 17 other cases in the past 5 years. Deaf people arrested for ignoring commands, wheelchair users charged with resisting arrest because they couldn't move as quickly as officers demanded, autistic people brutalized during mental health crises. The police department's response was predictable: deny, defend, delay. But they hadn't counted on Michael Thompson's 12 years of meticulous documentation. Every case, every complaint, every pattern of abuse against disabled citizens. The evidence was overwhelming. Federal investigators got involved. The Department of Justice announced a civil rights investigation, and Officer Derek Williams, facing not just termination but criminal charges for assault and deprivation of rights under color of law, finally understood that the system he'd relied on to protect him was abandoning him. His lawyer advised him to take a plea deal. Williams refused. "I was doing my job. I'm not pleading guilty to anything." "Derek, you're on video assaulting a blind man. The jury will see it. You'll lose." "Then we go to trial." "I'm a cop. Juries trust cops," his lawyer sighed. "Not anymore. Not after George Floyd, not after Breonna Taylor, and especially not after viral videos of cops brutalizing disabled people. The world has changed, Derek. You just didn't notice." The trial was set for 6 months later. In the meantime, Michael Thompson became the face of a movement he'd been building for years. He gave speeches at universities. He testified before Congress about police treatment of disabled people. He worked with the Justice Department to develop new training protocols. And everywhere he went, he carried his white cane and his body camera, documenting a world that still didn't see disability as fully human. One evening, Keisha found Michael in his apartment, listening to the news coverage of another case, a deaf woman in Seattle, tased by police for not responding to verbal commands. "You okay?" Keisha asked. "No, but I'm not giving up." Michael turned toward her voice. "How's the documentary coming?" "Almost done. Your footage, plus the trial coverage, plus all the interviews. It's powerful, Michael. Really powerful." "Good. Because Williams's trial starts next month, and I want people to understand this isn't about one cop. It's about all of us. Every disabled person trying to exist in a world that sees us as less than human." Keisha sat beside him. You know they're going to come after you hard at trial. They'll say you provoked him, that you were looking for trouble. Let them. I have the video. And more importantly, I have the truth." Michael smiled, grim but determined. Williams spent 15 years getting away with this because people believed his word over victims' reality. Not anymore. The camera doesn't lie. And this time, justice might actually mean something. The courtroom was packed on the first day of trial. Disability rights activists filled the gallery. News cameras lined the hallway. And Michael Thompson sat at the prosecution table, his white cane resting against his chair. His body camera, the one that had captured everything, entered into evidence as Exhibit A. Officer Derek Williams sat across the aisle with his lawyer, Marcus Chen, who'd built a career defending cops. Chen's strategy was simple: character assassination. Make the jury believe Michael was the real threat. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chen began his opening statement, "this case isn't about disability discrimination. It's about a man with a vendetta against police who deliberately provoked an officer into a confrontation he could record and exploit." Michael felt Keisha tense beside him. She was testifying as an expert witness on the documentary project they'd been working on together. "Mr. Thompson isn't the victim he claims to be. He's a former attorney who spent years suing police departments. He's an activist who profits from anti-police narratives. And on the day in question, he was wearing a hidden camera, proof that he was looking for exactly the incident that occurred." The prosecutor, Amanda Rodriguez, stood for her opening. "The defense wants you to believe that a blind man with a white cane is dangerous, that asking to buy groceries is provocation, that trying to stay upright without your mobility device is assault. They want you to believe Officer Williams's lies over your own eyes. But you'll see the video, and you'll know the truth." The video played on screens throughout the courtroom. Even after seeing it hundreds of times, Michael felt his body tense hearing his own voice. "I'm blind. I need my cane to walk." The jury watched in silence. Several looked visibly uncomfortable as Williams slammed Michael to the ground. Chen tried to reframe it. "You'll notice Mr. Thompson pulls away when Officer Williams attempts to secure him. That's resisting arrest." "I'm blind," Michael's voice echoed from the speakers. "I'm just trying to stay upright." He's trained in how to make interactions with police look worse than they are. "Objection!" Rodriguez stood. "Mr. Thompson's training was as a civil rights attorney, not a stunt coordinator. This characterization is prejudicial and absurd." Sustained. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Witness after witness testified about Williams's history of excessive force complaints, all against people of color, all dismissed or ignored by the department. Medical experts testified about Michael's injuries, the psychological trauma of being brutalized while unable to see what was happening. And Michael himself took the stand. "Mr. Thompson," Rodriguez asked gently, "can you describe what it's like to be stopped by police when you're blind?" "It's terrifying. You can't see what's happening. You can't read body language or facial expressions. You can't tell if a weapon is being drawn. You're completely vulnerable, dependent on the officer's humanity. And in my case, Officer Williams had none." Chen cross-examined aggressively. "You've made a career out of attacking police officers, haven't you?" "I've made a career out of defending people whose constitutional rights were violated by police officers. There's a difference. You wear a camera everywhere you go now. Isn't that because you're looking for incidents to exploit?" "I wear a camera because I'm blind, Black, and I've learned that without video evidence, nobody believes victims over cops, even when the victim is telling the truth and the cop is lying." "Objection." "I'll allow it," the judge said. Chen pressed harder. "You knew Officer Williams would react if you didn't comply immediately. I explained I was blind within the first 10 seconds. I explained my cane wasn't a weapon. I complied with every order except dropping my mobility device, which would have left me completely helpless." Michael's voice remained steady. "Officer Williams chose to brutalize me anyway. That's not my fault. That's his." The defense's entire case collapsed when the prosecution presented Williams's own body camera footage. The footage he'd forgotten was recording. Audio captured him telling another officer afterward, "Had to make an example." "These people think they can just do whatever they want." "These people," Rodriguez repeated in her closing argument. Officer Williams made his intent clear. Michael Thompson wasn't suspicious. He was black. He was disabled. And in Officer Williams's eyes, that made him less than human, less deserving of dignity, less deserving of rights. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts: assault under color of law, deprivation of civil rights, false arrest, filing a false police report. Michael heard the verdict read and felt something release in his chest. Not quite relief, not quite victory, just the exhausted satisfaction of being finally believed. Officer Derek Williams was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. The police department, facing the Justice Department investigation, agreed to a consent decree requiring comprehensive disability rights training, new policies on mobility devices, and independent oversight of excessive force complaints. But the real change came from something simpler. Michael's documentary, Blind Justice, premiered 6 months after the trial. It showed not just his case, but dozens of others, disabled people across America brutalized by police who saw disability as threat rather than humanity. The film went viral, won awards, sparked conversations, and it changed how police departments nationwide trained officers to interact with disabled people. 1 year after his arrest, Michael stood in the same police precinct where he'd been held in a cell. But this time, he was there as an invited guest, training new recruits on disability awareness. When you see someone with a white cane, that's not a weapon. That's a mobility device protected by federal law. When someone doesn't respond to verbal commands, consider that they might be deaf. When someone moves differently than you expect, consider that they might have a neurological condition. Michael paused. And when you see someone who looks different, acts different, exists different, remember that your job is to protect and serve everyone, not just the people who look like you. After the training, a young black officer approached Michael. "Officer Thompson, sorry, Mr. Thompson, I just wanted to say thank you. I have a brother with cerebral palsy. I worry about him every day. What you did, what you're doing, it matters." Michael smiled. "What's your brother's name?" "James." "Tell James to keep his camera charged, and tell him there are people fighting for him, every single day." Keisha found Michael later that evening at his favorite coffee shop, the one whose owner had known him for years and always described where everything was located so he could navigate independently. "How'd the training go?" "Better than I expected. Some of them actually listened." Michael sipped his coffee. "Williams appeals his sentence next month." "You worried?" "No, the video doesn't lie. Neither does justice when it finally shows up." He paused. "How's the next documentary coming?" "Rough Cut's almost done. This one's about deaf people and police interactions, based on that Seattle case." "Good. Because this isn't over. Williams was one cop. There are thousands more who think disability is suspicious. That difference is dangerous." Michael set down his coffee. "But every video, every trial, every time we force the system to see us, that's progress. Slow, painful progress. You ever regret that day? Wish you'd just stayed home?" "Every time my face hurts, every time I remember hitting the concrete." Michael smiled. "But then I think about the changes that came after. The policies, the training, the conversations. If my trauma bought those things, bought safety for other disabled people, then maybe it was worth it. You shouldn't have had to buy safety with your body. No, but that's how change happens. Someone has to be willing to stand up, or in my case, be slammed down and say, this isn't acceptable. Someone has to be the face of injustice so others finally see the pattern." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the coffee shop's ambient noise. Michael thought about Officer Williams in prison, learning what it meant to be powerless. He thought about the recruits he'd trained today, some of whom might actually remember that disabled people are human. He thought about James, the young officer's brother, navigating a world that still saw his cerebral palsy as threat. And he thought about his camera, always recording, always documenting, always bearing witness to a world slowly, painfully learning to see disability as variation rather than violation. The revolution wasn't over, but it had begun. One video, one trial, one changed policy at a time. If this story moved you, remember that disabled people face police violence at disproportionate rates. White canes aren't weapons. Wheelchairs aren't threats. Communication devices aren't suspicious. Disability is simply part of human diversity, and it deserves the same protection and respect as any other identity. Michael Thompson's camera saved his freedom and his life. But thousands of disabled people don't have cameras, don't have advocates, don't have the resources to fight back. They need a system that sees them as human from the start, not after viral videos force that recognition. Change is possible, justice is possible, but only when we refuse to accept brutality as normal, when we believe victims over badges, and when we finally understand that protecting and serving means everyone.